This week, Boss are still up to stuff in the north. Pandemic Legion announced Have Paladins will travel. Literally Triggered are doing their own thing in Geminate. An interesting mix show up for a Goonswarm Astrahus. It is not a good week for Leviathans. FI.RE and Rekking Crew keep on skirmishing. Hard Knocks take down a brave wormhole Fortizar, and Fredrick Vonhole strikes down another AT ship. Hello, I'm Frost, and this is your weekly EVE Online update. Welcome back. So it's been an interesting week this week at EVE, mainly because we've not been seeing kind of the big fights, but actually a lot more kind of very localized skirmishes going on, even from the bigger groups. But before we get into all of that, let me start off by announcing the winners of the Scope Syndication skins. So these were my last two Varga Marauder Scope Syndication skins that I gave away. And my winners were Rusticus Partibus and Aphiron. So congratulations to my two winners. And Andrew P from the episode prior to the week before, you've still not got in touch with me. That's your YouTube name. Please get in touch with me to win your Varga Scope Syndication skin. I will keep it safely tucked away until you eventually realize that you have won. Now it's a new month, so I have a new skin to give away, and I'll show you all the details on that a little bit later on. Okay, so let's jump into the news. Let me jump up into my box. And let me bring up the universe map properly. There we go. I was already kind of just checking out something in Geminate there before I got into the news. As always, I'm going to make sure my pen is at the ready, and I'm going to work my way around the donut. And then also I'm going to be covering some stuff in Empire Space and Wormholes this week as well. All right, so first up, we're going to talk about Tenal. So with Tenal, the main thing I wanted to point out here is, as you can see, all of the systems now are pretty much fraternity, all of these systems, and there was the handover has been pretty much completed between fraternity and Pandemic Horde, which I talked about last week, where Peregrine Falls and Tenal and some of the Veil of the Silence systems were flipped round as Pandemic Horde are moving their staging up into Peregrine Falls. Now, the interesting thing here is actually Boss have actually managed to take a few of the iHubs in the region. So Boss is still creating issues. Now Boss, I think all the way back in 2016, that was the last time that Razor were up here, actually held Sob in this constellation here. And it looks like they're kind of trying to re-establish themselves into Tenal. So whether they actually maintain these iHubs or whether they get knocked out, it really depends on how fraternity, how important fraternity consider these systems to be for them at this point in time. Now, a little side note on this, if we actually look at the all-time kills in the region, the top character is actually XXNemXX. I don't know how you pronounce that, XNemX, is actually from Boss. So Boss do have history in this region, as do obviously Razor Alliance, who are still actually at the top, because Razor Alliance consider Tenal to be their true homeland, even though they now live all the way down in Deterid, I think it is. I think it's Deterid, yeah. So, yeah, and Innsmother, possibly, yeah, but a long way from home there. Veni Vici almost caught up with Razor, but then they imploded and ceased to be. So yeah, just an interesting little factlet there to add to that. Now, so that's kind of what's going on with Tenal. Now in Venal, as you know, there's been the ongoing situation with Boss and Friends versus NC Dot and Co, as in PanFam. PanFam wanting to remove Boss and Friends from this region. So obviously last week I talked about the overkill thing with all the Titans coming in, and I think everyone pretty much reflected in the comments there is no such thing as overkill. That was kind of my message with the title. The title was a bit ambiguous. It just said never overkill. So I meant it to go both ways, as in never overkill is some people's point of view, while it's never overkill is the other, and obviously the latter is the predominant view in EVE, that nothing is ever overkill. But having said that, as you'll see from the news this week, we're kind of seeing a shift in the opposite direction now. Now, before going off completely on a tangent, we're going to talk about PF-QHQ. So there is one Astrahus left there that belongs to Boss. So obviously the Fortizar that was in QHA is now gone, and they're using that as their staging. But as a consequence of this, a fight did actually break out over these two systems next door, as NC Dot and PL came to reinforce this Astrahus. But the thing that's interesting here as you can see, we had some pretty even numbers, and we didn't have all the bat phones going or anything. You know, we had NC Dot and PL just show up pretty much on their own. Although there's some people traveled up from the south here, which is kind of these three groups here, which I believe have a coalition name, but I haven't actually had it confirmed yet. So if someone from one of these groups wants to come and confirm that to me, that would be great. Whether I can actually use that name, if it is the right name, I don't know, because it'll probably demonetize me, but we'll try. So Dock Workers, No Forks Given, and Shadow Cartel came up to help out Brotherhood of Spacers. What is interesting with this, though, is that obviously we had the Serbs come up from Dock Workers, Shadow Cartel, and No Forks Given. The boss came out in Feroxes. Actually, No Forks Given are in Feroxes as well, as are Scary Wormhole people. But the thing is that they actually seem to make the Feroxes work. They lose a lot, but obviously, you know, they come out as positive. So I'm well known for having my hatred of Feroxes. So congrats to Boss to actually make them work, because they clearly, you know, came up tops on the ISK war there, even though they obviously lost a lot of ships. But T1 Feroxes are much more disposable than the Eagles and Munins that were brought by PL and NC Dot. So interesting little view there. Obviously we've got a few revs in there as well, so there's still the need to drop in a few dreadnoughts. But the good news is that the Astrahus, I actually checked it today, it's fully repaired, so that is still going strong. So clearly there's going to be more content there to come in the future. All right, so then we're going to go over to a battle report, which I thought was really interesting. And it's this one here. So this took place in YMJG-4. Which is in the heartland of fraternity. If we actually go over to Veil of the Silent very quickly, Veil of the Silent, there it is. It's right here. So it's right next door to the staging system of 4-HWWF, and that will become important later. But what is interesting with this was that there was a Spectre fleet that was flying around, and Pandemic Legion decided to bring a Paladin fleet. So I don't think I've ever seen this many Paladins together in one go before. I think there were 28 from the summary. Let's have a look. Yeah, 27. There's actually a 28th one, and we'll come to that one a little bit later on, because that's a whole story to itself. So anyway, yeah, they brought out a whole bunch of Paladins against this public fleet. I think it was Spectre fleet that brought this out. You can see a whole bunch of things, from Thoraxes to Drakes and Hurricanes, etc., Feroxes. And this fight all took place in the ESS and YMJG. What is interesting, though, is that Pandemic Legion brought out a whole bunch of Paladins, but then they took them 15 jumps to get here. So they went all the way over to Fraternity Space to get some content. So, you know, the days of gating battleships I thought were pretty much over, but apparently not. So Marauders are willing to go 15 jumps to go and find a fight. Now, there was an unfortunate death of another Paladin, and I'm going to point this one out just simply because this Paladin didn't make it to the fight. So, as I mentioned, the Paladins were gating, and they had to gate through 4-WWF. Now, if I go over to this screen very quickly, have I got the screen grab somewhere? Did I have it anywhere? Let me just check. If not, I'll just grab it quickly. Let me just hop over here and go to here, and I forgot to do this. There we go. So I just want to show you this. This is the state of 4-WWF right now. As you can see, the bubble camp is still going strong. Winterco are refreshing these bubbles constantly. They are not letting up. And Snuffed Out are having to be very, very patient about getting out the rest of their dread. So there's been no breakout attempts. They have just left it for the time being. And I think now it is just purely a waiting game between the determination of Fraternity specifically to keep maintaining this bubble camp versus the will of Snuffed Out to get their dreads out. But anyway, back to the Paladin. So the Paladin got poured in these bubbles. So the reason why this Paladin died and the others did not was, unfortunately, if I hover over it, this pilot changed his prop mod in a rush because he was afterburner fit and all the others were micro warp drive. He changed his fit and put on a frigate afterburner, so a 5MN. As a consequence, he was slow boating through the bubbles, and Boss showed up in a bunch of bombers and made the most of the opportunity and bombed the Paladin. So there you go. So mistakes are easily made in a rush, and that is a good example of what can happen when you put a prop mod on a Paladin. Okay, so moving on. let's go back to Geminate. So you saw I had that up at the beginning. What I was looking at was down in this constellation here. So what I wanted to point out was that Literally Triggered, who are part of Winter Coalition, have deployed down here. And in fact, they've got a couple of Astrahouses in QPOK-B. And they are going and having kind of a deployment against Tissue and Arcos Core. And apparently there's been quite a lot of tit for tat in both directions. But what is interesting from this is what I've heard so far is that there's been no bat-phoning from the point of view of Literally Triggered. Literally Triggered are doing their own thing as an individual alliance. And therefore that's keeping the numbers fairly even, or more balanced, should I say, with Tissue and Arcos Core. And so therefore it's generating some good content for them. Now obviously when it comes down to the crunch and things are in hull timers, we'll have to see if bat phones are used. But for the time being, both sides seem to be maintaining the status quo there and engaging in some good fights apparently. So that's great to hear. And then we're going to go over next to Ethereum Reach. So this is once again just a very random one, but in Ethereum Reach in the system of LXQ2-T, which is right next door to Parla, which is low sec, and is the entrance kind of into the drone lands. There was an Imperium fleet that got involved. I've just found that the bubbles that I'd bookmarked, I just put them in completely the wrong place. Okay, I think it's this one. Yeah, LXQ2-T. So once again, this was an ESS fight, but what was interesting about this was the Imperium actually brought in a couple of Marauders. So Marauders are all the rage at the moment, as you know. And Pandemic Legion responded. But once again, we didn't talk about huge numbers here. So Pandemic Legion with a couple of Slice, a couple of Pandemic Horde, went up against this ESS roam from the Imperium and kept the numbers pretty equal. And once again, ended up having a good fight, very balanced fight if you actually look at the losses. What was impressive as well was that the two Marauders on the side of the Imperium and the Marauder on the side of PL or PanFam actually all got out. And I actually heard that these two Paladins, the Paladin and the Kronos, actually made it all the way back to 1DQ. So they got there with filaments and they got back through Pochven. So it's impressive how far you can now travel with kind of these big ships. You know, before you couldn't take battleships on big long roams like this because it was just simply too impractical. So the filaments have kind of helped in that sense that now, you know, we're seeing bigger ships and being thrown around all over New Eden. So there you go. Then what else have I got? Okay, so talking about, we've got Goonswarm here. So we're going to stay on the subject of Goonswarm and we're going to go over to Placid. So in Placid, let me find my universe and let me find Placid. In Ostingali, I think it is. I can never remember where it is on the map. I'm pretty certain it's Ostingali. Let me just check my battle report. Yeah, Ostingali. It's right on the border here somewhere. I mean, let me just type it in because I am suffering there. Ostingali, there we go. And hopefully I will be able to see it. There it is, right there. So, in the system of Ostingali, which is right next door to Stakmon. Stakmon then leads into high-sec Empire space, which then gives routes to G2, etc. So there was an Astrahus, wrong battle report, an Astrahus, no, wrong, oh yeah, right battle report, that belonged to Goonswarm. So I've been all over the place today. There we go. The Astrahus did actually get destroyed, but what was interesting was actually who showed up to defend it. So this Astrahus was probably a jump freighter point for the kind of logistics route for Goonswarm to get to high-sec. Now, what we had is we had our trio again of Shadow Cartel, Dock Workers, no Force Given weren't there actually, so just the duo, came along to help Goonswarm defend this. But what was interesting was Cruiser's Crew seemed to be the main antagonists, but Pandemic Horde showed up in a bunch of dreads without subcap support. So you can see here there's quite a lot of dreads there, all from Pandemic Horde and from Cruiser's Crew. And then there was a Macarial fleet with a few Balgorns and Armageddons and stuff thrown in there from Cruiser's Crew. A couple of Simis from Pandemic Horde. There were a couple of Serbs as well. But it was kind of a very small key affair from Pandemic Horde, but a lot of dreads, considering there was no subcap support from Pandemic Horde. So once again, this is what I was saying earlier about, you know, we're not seeing kind of like the full doctrine being thrown in here, but stuff just being thrown in just for the content. Also, Dock Workers, who are kind of enemies right now of Shadow Cartel, Deepwater hooligans, who are actually enemies right now of Shadow Cartel and dock workers, actually showed up in a bunch of Nagas and third-partied on that as well. Okay, so then we're going to talk about the first of our Leviathans to go down. So 2 Leviathans died this week. This is the first one. Now, as you can see, the fit is minimal, but some discussions did come up on my Discord about this. Now, this was caught by White Sky primarily, but what you can see here is that it's actually got the minimum it needs to travel. Maybe some cap recharges or cap boosters would have been handy, but it had basically the cloak, it had the battleship micro warp drive for the quick warps, and then the faster lines on the lows. So it was kind of fit for travel, but clearly the pilot decided that if it was going to lose it, the pilot was going to lose it. It was going to be in a situation where it was not going to be able to defend itself. It would not have any subcap support. So they clearly bought it from a low sec station and went, I will just put the absolute minimum on it in case it dies, which in this case it did. So it's your call on this in the comments as to whether this was the right fit or the wrong fit or the wrong approach. I mean, personally for me, it's like it did the job. So, you know, it kind of minimized the losses and saved having to lose all your fittings and everything else. So there you go. All right, so while we're talking in comments, let's jump straight into the giveaway. So this week, I have a new skin to announce. It is for a freighter. I think it's the first time we've had a scope syndication skin freighter for the Obelisk. So here it is. It actually looks really good. It actually looks even better in the hangar when the lights are a little bit low. It's got that nice kind of really golden front to it. So there you go. So if you want to win this, you have to enter in the draw. I'm going to do things a bit differently this week. I'm not going to do a keyword. Simply by putting in a comment will be enough, because my question to you this week is, what are you doing in EVE right now? So obviously we're not seeing kind of any big wars at the moment. We're seeing kind of a lot of small, big groups doing small deployments and small scale stuff. So I'd be really interested to hear what you're up to in EVE at the moment and what is your thing. So it'll just kind of give me a better picture of kind of what people are up to, because from a news standpoint, you know, we're not getting the kind of the big fights that we've been getting in recent times. So I'd be really interested to know that. So there you go, nice and easy this week. Just put something in the comments about what you're up to and you'll be automatically entered into the draw. The cutoff date is Friday the 18th of March at 1800 UTC, and I wish you the best of luck for that. Okay, right, so back up into my box. We're going to go over this time. We're going to go over to Tenerifis, and we'll talk a little bit about Fire Coalition and Rekking Crew. So most of the fights that are happening at the moment are kind of happening in this region around here. So it's the border between Rekking Crew and Catch. So Rekking Crew and Fire Coalition. Fire Coalition being in Tenerifis, and then Rekking Crew being in Catch. I think WOMP is right on the other side of that gate. Let's double check. Yeah, so you've got WOMP, Weapons of Mass Production, are just on the other side, and then obviously the rest of Rekking Crew up here. On this top section here. So basically what we're seeing at the moment, as I understand, is primarily small scale stuff, just kind of jump bridges kind of being hit, and skirmishing going on. Triumvirate and CVA getting involved in this from time to time as well, but we're not kind of seeing any sov warfare, we're not seeing any kind of major structure timers or anything, just really some fights going on. I'm also going to have a battle report here, and as you can see, it's mostly see all the Fire Coalition people on the left here, and then mostly all RC with a little bit of CVA just dropped in there as well for this one particular fight. Now, this is your typical kind of hack, you know, fight, you know, Serbs versus Serbs. But one of the interesting things was I wanted to just point out, there's a video here from Fire Coalition. I just wanted to point this out for some really good bubbling. So you're going to see this, it's going to appear in about, so basically this is from Fire Coalition's point of view. But right now, right here, you're going to see these bubbles appearing, and they're actually following the fleet. And there's just some really, really good fleet bubbling going on there. So you can see there's that they've actually managed to get ahead of the fleet and bubble ahead. And then the other thing as well was that you then see these Serbs just come in for a brawl. So, you know, how to deal with flight time with Serbs, just go in at 0 and just start shooting at like 20 kilometers. So yeah, interesting little video there, but mostly I just wanted to point that out because it was just, I saw it and I thought, wow, good bubble. So I don't know who the dictator pilots were, but that was a good job there. Okay, Then we're going to go and we're going to skip over all the rest of the south, because as I said, the rest of the south is all very, very quiet. And we're going to zoom all the way over to Cloud Ring, because I want to point out something that I missed last week. So last week I talked about O-ZXUV and how the Shadow Ultimatum Fortizar was destroyed by Snuffed Out, and how Fraternity came to help defend that. But something actually happened right next door that I missed in F7C-HO. So just as a reminder, here is the battle report. And as you can see, Fraternity and Winterco, should I say, showed up in big numbers to help Shadow Ultimatum. And then Snuffed Out showed up with Capital Fusion and actually managed to destroy the Fortizar. But there was actually more to the story, because the Fraternity, so the Winter Coalition fleet, then extracted when it saw the Fortizar was dying. But something happened as they jumped through the gate, and it's right here. The initiative took great offense at Winter Coalition coming so far south in such big numbers. And so they wanted to make a statement. And what is unusual about this statement as well is that I need to point out that this happened just after downtime. So this was a flash form by the initiative. And they managed to form a lot of Titans and supercarriers and carriers and drop them on the Munin fleet of Fraternity or Winter Coalition. Actually managed to pick off one of the monitors as well. So therefore, that, as you can see here, 2 Erebuses, 11 Avatars, 2 Ragnaroks, 12 Nyx, 2 Aeons, 26 Archons, 18 Thanes, and 5 Nidhoggers. So considering that was a flash form outside of their strongest time zone, because EU is still, I think, the strongest time zone of the initiative, that was a pretty major statement there being made by the initiative and the Imperium generally about Winterco coming so far south and getting involved in affairs, or well, getting involved so close to the border. It's not really south because Cloud Ring's more in the north, but being so close to Imperium borders with such a large fleet was not considered acceptable. Okay, so then we are going to talk about, the dread fight from No Forks Given. So once again, this was last week. I talked about this fight between Deepwater Hooligans and of Sound Mind and Pirates Lord of War versus Dock Workers, No Forks Given, Cruiser's Crew, and Scary Wormhole People, with local or primary showing up to third party. And I actually asked a question about what the flycatchers are doing there, considering it's low sec, and someone made a very, very good point. The flycatchers are actually, this is in the YouTube comments, I can't remember your name, I do apologize. The flycatchers are actually decent ships, even without the bubbles. So that is an absolutely fair point. The only reason I brought this up is because I actually have a video of the fight. Once again, I need to mention, I always link all the videos in the description before, so like the fire one below, that's linked in the description below. The only thing I wanted to point out is this video was actually quite nicely made. There's also a change of logo here. Deepwater Hooligans has apparently become Dishwater Hooligans, and I'm seeing kind of like a sink tray full of plates and knives and forks there, so quite interesting. But what was interesting with this was that obviously the pilot was dual boxing and has actually split the screen in the edit there. But you can see that this fight was the kind of fight we all enjoy, right? Just complete and absolute chaos. Everything just all on top of everything else, and just a complete brawl coming up there. So once again, check that out. I like the fact he's got using green on for some of his icons over there. I've not seen that before. Anyway, there you go. So check that out in your own time. Link is in the description below. Okay. So next we're going to go over and we're going to talk about the other Leviathan that died. So this Leviathan was caught in the system of Hothamoth in Derelict. Now, this was a full fit Titan this time. And the thing to point out here is to really check your kill boards when you're traveling, because if you remember, actually last week, Purple Helmeted Warriors actually killed 2 Nyxes last week in this very system of Hothamoth. So this is a warning to everybody right now, is if you're traveling through Hothamoth, or you're planning to travel through Hothamoth in a super capital, please be on your guard, because Purple Helmeted Warriors have been very successful there, having killed 2 Nyxes and a Leviathan in just over the space of a week. So something to look out for there. All right, then we're going to jump into we're going to talk about a Virtuoso. So a Virtuoso was destroyed. As you can see, Fredrick Vonhole actually was president and added another AT ship to his kills, and this was killed in the wormhole J155737. What is unfortunate for this particular pilot is, if we actually look, is that is the second one in a row that has been caught by Fredrick Vonhole. I think Fredrick was on the other one as well. Yeah, so Fredrick Vonhole has got this pilot twice. So if you remember last week, I was talking about Fredrick Vonhole's insurance policy for this particular pilot. Maybe that would have worked out. So, so once again, Vonhole proving he is the #1 AT ship killer, and he will find you if you don't have your insurance. So there you go. So so that's that in terms of AT ships destroyed. Then another thing that happened in a wormhole here was I just noticed this, that Hard Knock Citizens managed to kill a Fortizar belonging to Brave Collective. Brave did actually put up a defense. They actually brought in 141 pilots from Brave Collective and another 34 from Brave United, and put them into a whole bunch of praxis, but they couldn't hold out against the Legions and the Shacks and with also some serious Logi support there. Yeah, so I imagine they were unable to break the tank of those Legions and Damnations with the praxis. Also interesting is that we have one monitor from Fraternity, just the one pilot from Fraternity. So I don't know what the story is there, whether Alison Stacey was previously Hard Knocks and whether that monitor was FCing for the Hard Knocks fleet, or whether it was just there on its own randomly. So who knows? Good question, right? Yeah, a couple of Vargas. Do they have a scope syndication skin? That is the question. Anyway, the other thing as well is that unfortunately 4 Rorquals dropped out of the Fortizar and were destroyed. I don't know if any others were scooped. I don't know what dropped out of the Pinata. Obviously, as a reminder, when a Fortizar dies in a upwell structure dies in a wormhole, everything falls out of it. There's no asset safety. So obviously these Ravens as well were part of those kills. So there you go. Now, in terms of ratting kills or whaling kills and stuff, it's been an interesting week, because this week, if we actually look at Rorquals, we had a lot of Rorquals die this week. 23 Rorquals. Obviously, 4 came from the wormhole drop that I just talked about. And that still leaves 19 Rorquals, which is definitely up on what we've been seeing before. So a lot more of those coming out. But on the other hand, when it comes to super carriers, it looks like super carriers, the ratting carriers, are finally dying a death, because there was only one this week. It was this one from Tox team was a ratting carrier. All of the other super carriers that died, the 3 others that died, all died under different circumstances. So the one from Bantish, the one in Bantish right here, I actually have a video once again. This died to Losec, Naish, Lupin and White Sky. You may want to check this video out. It's actually quite interesting, because this super carrier was being very, very slippery. They were trying to scan it down. They would scan it down. Every time they'd scan it down, they'd arrive just that fraction of a second too late. The Nix would actually manage to warp off, and then they would be able to then have to pin it down again. In this instance, they actually did catch it, but it took them about 15 minutes before they actually got a grip on it and actually managed to pin it down properly. So yeah, go check that out. So anyway, coming back to these super carriers. So that was the one in Bantish. Then the one in 0OYZ-G, apparently, as I understand, it died to Fire Coalition, but apparently the pilot had an argument or a disagreement with some people in their corp that were going to supply a Sino to him, and basically just warped it off and warped it straight into a fleet to get it to die through frustration. So from what I understand, that was a self-imposed whelp of the Wyvern. And then finally, the other Wyvern in Anunan in Lone Trek is down to that super carrier group that I mentioned last week. The ones that got caught in the bubbles up in Winter Coast space, and then they got rescued by Pandemic Horde and Test Alliance Please Ignore, who brought up 250 Munions. That's the same group as far as I know, and they managed to catch a Wyvern somewhere in Losec. So yeah, good job on that one. So once again, just the one ratting super this week. So it just leaves me to announce now some player stuff events. First one, I'm going to mention it now just in case I forget next week. So this isn't this Saturday, it's the Saturday afterwards. That's Saturday the 19th of March. In the system of EViEnna, Stay Frosty Abandapar, this is organised by Rick Jarvex, is doing another frigate free-for-all. 10,000 free ships are going to be given away from 1600 UTC to 2200 UTC. There's going to be all kinds of things. There's going to be caps involved. There's going to be all kinds of stuff dropped on grid as well. And loads of free frigates being handed out. So I'm going to try and make it to this as well. I'll have to get in touch with Rick, see if I can do something. I may stream it as well. I'll have to see how it works in my diary. But I will try and be there. But if not, I mean, why not be there, right? This is a great event, and 10,000 ships dying in one system should make for an interesting afternoon, evening, or morning, depending on your time zone. So once again, Saturday, March the 19th, and I'll try and remember to mention it again next week as well. Then I need to mention as well, once again, EVE Montreal. That's coming pretty soon now. That's the end of the month, March 26, 2022. EVE Montreal wanted me to mention that you'll get some custom merch if you register before the 13th of March. So you've got about a week or so to do that. And from what I remember, it is a bottle opener, sorry. A bottle opener with some sorry in advance branding on it. And obviously unlimited bacon. Because that is obviously a sure winner. So that's that. Then other things to mention as well. EVE New Orleans have also just announced their dates. That is now the 10th to the 12th of June. And they're going to be announcing their room block rates pretty soon. So that's not organised yet. They have a Discord. I will link that in the description below. EViEnna has also announced their date. That is the 15th of October 2022. I think they've got a Discord. I will try and track it down. If not, I will link their Twitter feed in the description below. All right, so I think that's it for me this week. I hope you enjoyed the show as always. Please join me on my Twitch show on a Friday if you can at 2000 UTC. And if not, I'll see you here next week. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. And thank you for watching. Till the next one. Bye.